Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Allen, I have such good news for you because in the last Congress, when we had Chair Duncan of this subcommittee and I was the ranking Democrat on this subcommittee, we passed the Advance Act, which we actually all voted for on both sides of the aisle in this committee. It went to the floor and we passed it, and President Biden signed it. And what this bill was designed to do is exactly what you're concerned about, which is to streamline and modernize the regulations around nuclear power. And as Mr. Pallone said, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle really every time seem stunned that Democrats support an all of the above approach. But as we're seeing large loads like data centers and increasing demand for electricity all across America, we recognize that we're going to have an all of the above approach, including renewables and everything else. So let's stop acting like we haven't done anything, because the last Congress we did some very important things. One of the important things we did was the Inflation Reduction Act. I want to talk to some of you about that. Now, all of the panelists early in this hearing, all of you said that that demand for electricity is going to increase in this country. Is there anybody who disagrees with that? No. They're all shaking their heads no. And so the second question is, regardless of the source of the power, to accommodate the increase, we're just going to need to have a variety of sources for electricity transmission, and we're going to have to increase reliability. Does anybody disagree with that statement? No. They're all shaking their heads no. Well, so one other question is, all of your grids that you're talking about here today, they don't just rely on fossil fuels. They also rely increasingly on renewable energy. Does anybody disagree with that statement? No. They're all shaking their heads no. Here's why I ask that. Because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are implying that the way we're going to solve the issue of increased demand and increased reliability is by just simply jettisoning renewable energy and going, I guess, to nuclear and fossil fuels. Is there anybody who thinks that your agencies and the people who you are running the grids could jettison all renewable energy? No. They're all shaking their heads no. There was a recent study that was published by a think tank called RMI, and what it said is that the Inflation Reduction Act made clean energy cheaper than more than 90% of proposed gas plants. And Mr. Chairman, I would ask unanimous consent to put that article into the record.
So ordered.
Thank you. Now, collectively, the IIJA and the IRA allocated almost $17 billion in loans and grants for grid development. But despite that, the Republicans voted 54 times to repeal the Clean Energy Plan since the Democrats passed the IRA. So I don't have time to ask all of these wonderful witnesses today. So the one closest to me is Mr. Aslana. I'm sorry for you. But what I want to ask you is, if we repealed all of that money going for grid development from the IRA, would that help or hurt our ability to stabilize the grid and to increase production?
I think in the near term, the interconnection queue is full of a lot of renewable projects, many of whom are, I'm sure, counting on the IRA. And so I'm sure it would make those less likely to come, and we do need them to come.
Okay. Does anybody disagree with that on this panel? No. They're all shaking their heads no. Now, I just want to ask one more thing to follow up on what Ms. McClellan was asking. Mr. Van Wheely, in your written testimony, you talked about offshore wind as a potential vital resource for grid reliability in New England. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, were you aware that as part of the very early executive orders, President Trump signed an executive order putting a halt to wind production offshore nationwide?
Yes.
What would that do to the ability to have reliable grid production in New England?
It has an impact, as I said in my testimony, towards the end of the decade, because we were counting on these resources coming into the system by the end of the decade.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I'd ask unanimous consent to put a copy of that executive order into the record.
Without objections to order, the
Thank you so much. I yield back.